The Galactic Military Academy simulation chamber was, as usual, a hub of anxious cadets and smug instructors, though today, the smugness reached unprecedented levels. Senior instructor Zix Vex, a towering Arthurian with too many limbs and not enough patience, stood before the gathered students with what passed for a smile on his mandible-heavy face. If you've never seen an Arthurian smile, imagine a spider trying to do jazz hands. That's the level of unsettling we're dealing with here today. Zix Vex announced, his translator struggling to convey his mix of superiority and anticipation. We face the legendary siege of Cathorian simulation. For those who haven't memorized their military history, which should be none of you, this scenario has remained unbeaten for precisely 103 standard cycles. The assembled alien cadets chittered, buzzed, and vibrated with appropriate awe. In the back, 3 human students exchanged glances that would have sent any sensible betting person running to place money on them. The scenario recreates the impregnable Cathorian fortress during the Third Expansion War. Zix Vex continued, bringing up a holographic display of a structure that looked like someone had given a mountain armor plating and anger issues. The fastest attempt, by the renowned Voraxian Strategic Corps, took 3 standard months to fail spectacularly. Most teams don't last 3 days. Maya Chaos Rodriguez raised her hand, her expression innocent in a way that should have immediately triggered every warning system in the facility. Sir, just to clarify, the simulation runs on the standard GMA Mark VI engine, right? Zix Vex's antennae twitched in confusion. The technical specifications are irrelevant to the tactical challenge, Cadet Rodriguez. Next to her, Aiden Glitch Chen was taking notes with suspicious enthusiasm. His nickname, earned during his first week when he accidentally reversed the gravity in the cafeteria, should have been another red flag. And Sir Trevor Yeet O'Connor chimed in, barely containing his grin. The victory condition is simply reaching the central command room with at least 1 surviving team member, correct? Technically, yes, but the point is to demonstrate proper siege warfare techniques. Excellent, all 3 humans said in perfect unison, causing several nearby alien cadets to instinctively move away. Evolution had taught their species to recognize predatory behavior, after all. Zix Vex felt a slight tremor in his exoskeleton, an ancestral warning signal he couldn't quite interpret. He looked at the 3 human cadets, each wearing the exact same expression that primitive human hunters must have worn when they figured out how to make their first spears. The simulation begins in 20 minutes, he announced, trying to regain his authoritative tone. I suggest you use this time to review the fortress schematics and develop a proper strategy. Maya cracked her knuckles. Aiden pulled up the simulation's technical manual on his datapad. Trevor started juggling 3 styluses with a disturbing level of focus. The other alien cadets, displaying the survival instincts that had kept their species alive, quietly formed a circle away from the humans. They had all heard stories about Earth's speedrunners, they just never expected to see it applied to military training. Poor Zix Vex. He had no idea he was about to witness history being both made and thoroughly broken. The pre-simulation briefing room buzzed with the kind of nervous energy usually reserved for impending natural disasters which, considering the 3 humans huddled in the corner whispering excitedly, wasn't entirely incorrect. Did you see the physics parameters? Aiden murmured, scrolling through his datapad with the manic intensity of a caffeinated raccoon, discovering a trash can full of shiny objects. They never patched the momentum transfer calculations. A group of Zinthari cadets nearby fluttered their sensory membranes in obvious distaste. The tallest among them, PX Till, couldn't contain their skepticism any longer. You realize, they hummed condescendingly, that the Cathorian fortress was designed by the greatest military minds of the Golden Age. The outer walls alone are comprised of 47 layers of quantum-locked facet shift barriers. Maya looked up from where she was drawing what appeared to be a diagram of someone riding a missile. Neat. So they didn't account for packet loss in networked objects. The alien students stared at her, as if she'd suggested solving the siege by asking the fortress politely to surrender. Meanwhile, at the instructor's observation deck, an entirely different kind of chaos was unfolding. Credits and various valuable minerals were changing hands as the betting pool on the humans' imminent failure grew. Senior instructor Zix Vex was explaining the historical significance to a newly arrived evaluator from Central Command. The Cathorian siege simulation isn't just a test, he gestured at the holographic display showing the fortress's specs. It's a lesson in humility. The actual siege lasted 12 years and cost the lives of millions. This simulation teaches cadets that sometimes conventional military doctrine is the only path forward. The evaluator nodded sagely, her crystalline form refracting light in patterns of agreement. And these, humans think they can solve it. Their young Zix Vex chittered dismissively. All species go through this phase. They'll learn. Back in the briefing room, Trevor was experimenting with the simulation's object manipulation physics by balancing his chair on one leg. Hey Maya, what if we treated the quantum barriers like speedrun triggers? Ooh, good thinking. They probably use the same flag system as the victory condition markers. A nearby Valaxian cadet, whose species had spent 6 generations studying siege warfare, felt their primary brain begin to throb. The fortress has automated defense systems that track and eliminate any approaching forces. The targeting computers can calculate trajectories faster than organic minds can process thought. Aiden looked up from his datapad with the kind of smile that had preceded several of humanity's greatest discoveries and worst decisions. But can they calculate incorrect trajectories? What does that even mean? The Valaxian demanded. You know, Maya chimed in, like when you tell a computer that something is simultaneously going up and down, and it just she made a vague exploding gesture with her hands. The room fell silent, except for the sound of Trevor still balancing his chair, now somehow at an impossible angle. A holographic countdown appeared above their heads, showing 15 minutes until simulations start. The Cathorian fortress materialized in full detail through the briefing room's windows, a monument to military engineering that had consumed the careers of countless strategists. I bet you humans don't even know why this simulation is so important, PX Till sniffed. The Cathorian siege changed the face of modern warfare. It proved that some defensive positions are truly impregnable. Correction, Maya said, still sketching what now looked suspiciously like a physics exploit. It proved that some defensive positions are truly impregnable to anyone who plays by the rules. The betting pool upstairs had reached record levels. Several instructors had wagered their entire quarter's salary on the humans failing within the first hour. One particularly daring Arthurian bet they wouldn't last 5 minutes. None of them noticed Trevor quietly asking the simulation's AI some very specific questions about object persistence and spawn rates, or Aiden's growing collection of theoretical glitch compilation videos, or Maya's increasingly concerning diagrams that somehow involved quantum tunneling and what appeared to be a tower of carefully stacked chairs. The countdown continued its merciless descent toward what would soon be known as the incident that got physics engines banned from military simulations. 5 minutes before simulation start, the humans' questioning had reached a level of absurdity that made several alien instructors consider checking the Academy's oxygen levels. So just to confirm, Maya asked the simulation's AI interface, while balancing precariously on 2 chairs she'd stacked, if an object clips through a wall due to quantum uncertainty calculations, the simulation has to resolve its position on the other side, right? The AI's avatar flickered in what might have been confusion. Query unclear. Objects cannot clip through quantum-locked barriers. Not with that attitude, Aiden muttered, frantically typing calculations that looked more like a caffeine-induced fever dream than military strategy. A Nexzillion observer, whose species had literally evolved to understand complex spatial relationships, felt their fourth-dimensional awareness begin to hurt. What exactly are you trying to accomplish? Trevor, who had somehow acquired 7 more chairs and was arranging them in a pattern that defied several laws of physics, looked up with the kind of grin that preceded most evolutionary leaps. Ever heard of speedrunning? The blank stares from the assembled aliens prompted Maya to launch into what she called her TED Talk on Breaking Reality 101. Okay, so imagine you have a game simulation, whatever. The designers expect you to go through the front door. But she held up a finger dramatically. What if instead you exploit the fact that the physics engine can't properly calculate momentum transfers during frame-perfect jumps, launching yourself at precisely the right angle to trick the system into thinking you're simultaneously inside and outside a solid object, forcing it to resolve your position on the other side of the wall? Silence fell over the room, broken only by Aiden's maniacal typing and Trevor's continued chair-stacking experiments. That's not how warfare works, a Zinthari cadet protested weakly. Not with that attitude, all 3 humans chorused without looking up. Maya continued, now pacing excitedly. See, every simulation has to make compromises between processing power and accuracy. Finding those compromises is like finding little tears in reality, and if you pull on those tears just right, you can sequence break straight to the end goal. Trevor finished, having successfully created what appeared to be a physically impossible tower of furniture. A collective shudder ran through the alien observers as they finally began to grasp what they were witnessing. This wasn't military strategy. This was reality hacking. Look, Aiden said, turning his datapad to show a diagram that looked like an MC. Escher drawing having a stroke. If we abuse the object persistence bugs and the fact that the simulation doesn't properly check for collision resolution during saved state loads, we can basically. No, several aliens shouted simultaneously, their various appendages covering their auditory organs. Maya grinned. Too late. We've already found 3 major exploits and at least 2 backup strategies involving what we like to call quantum chair surfing. In the observation deck, the instructors watched with growing unease as the humans continued their increasingly concerning preparations. One of them was recording everything on their personal device, muttering something about documentary evidence for the inevitable inquiry. 30 seconds to simulation start, the AI announced. Trevor stood up from his chair tower, which now somehow incorporated elements from 3 different dimensions. Ready for operation, Yeet, the laws of physics. Hold up, Aiden said, making one final adjustment to his calculations. Need to make sure we hit the precise angle for the quantum barrier clip. 1 degree off and we'll just splat against the wall instead of phasing through it. That's the point of a barrier, a Valaxian cadet whispered, sounding close to tears. Maya patted them consolingly on what she hoped was their shoulder. Don't worry, where we're going, we don't need points. The simulation countdown entered its final seconds. The assembled aliens watched in horrified fascination as the 3 humans took positions around their incomprehensible chair construct, each wearing the kind of smile that suggested reality was more of a polite suggestion than a hard rule. 10 seconds, the AI announced. Remember, Trevor said, if we die, delete the browser history. 5 seconds. For science, Maya declared. For glitches, Aiden added. For the speedrun world record, Trevor concluded. The simulation began, and with it, the greatest violation of physics since humans discovered you could rocket jump in video games. The simulation flickered to life, materializing the legendary Cathorian fortress in all its impossibly defended glory. In the observation deck, instructors settled in for what they assumed would be another brief demonstration of human overconfidence. They got exactly 17 seconds of normalcy. That's when Aiden initiated what he called Operation Physics. More like Physicant. Frame perfect jump in 3, 2, 1. His fingers flew across the control interface as Trevor launched himself at a seemingly solid wall at precisely 47.3 degrees while holding what appeared to be 3 chairs stacked inside each other in a way that made reality hiccup. Now hitting pause buffer. The simulation stuttered, trying to calculate the impossible position of both Trevor and his quantum-entangled chair abomination. For a brief moment, the laws of physics entered a superposition of working and not working. Maya seized that moment with the precision of a caffeinated hummingbird, initiating pathfinding overflow. She had somehow convinced the AI targeting systems that she was simultaneously in 57 different locations, causing the defensive algorithms to have what could only be described as a mathematical nervous breakdown. From the observation deck came sounds of distress in 12 different alien languages. They can't do that, Zix Vex chittered in horror. That's not how anything works. Actually, the system AI interjected, according to my calculations. Error, divide by chair. Trevor had successfully phased through the first quantum barrier, his victory pose somewhat diminished by the fact that half his body was technically occupying the same space as a wall. Guys, I think I found the back rooms of reality. Also, I can see next Tuesday from here. Meanwhile, Aiden had discovered that if you manipulated object physics just right, you could create what he called a momentum ladder, essentially turning falling damage into upward momentum. He was now ascending the side of the fortress by repeatedly not hitting the ground in increasingly creative ways. This is a violation of everything we know about siege warfare, protested an elderly Valaxian instructor, watching as Maya somehow convinced the targeting systems that she was actually a particularly aggressive piece of furniture. Bold of you to assume we know anything, Maya called back cheerfully, while surfing on what appeared to be a quantum superposition chair through a barrage of plasma fire that couldn't decide if she was a valid target or just a very fast table. In the simulation's code, error messages were piling up faster than a cache overflow in a recursive function. Error object underscore persistence underscore violation. Error quantum underscore state underscore undefined. Error Schrödinger Sekadet detected. Error what underscore is underscore chair. Error physics.exe has stopped working. Error reality underscore breach underscore imminent. Trevor had now reached what was supposed to be the most secure part of the fortress by convincing the simulation that he was actually part of the wall he'd phased through earlier. Hey guys, if you clip your head through this barrier at exactly 43.7 degrees, you can see the victory room. Also, I think I can see the source code of the universe. Aiden, still ascending through increasingly creative abuse of gravity, had started a betting pool of his own. 10 credits says I can reach the top floor by falling upwards hard enough. The alien observers had moved through denial, anger, and bargaining, and were now firmly in the depression stage of grief as they watched 3 human cadets systematically dismantle a century of military doctrine through what appeared to be aggressive violations of causality. Look at the bright side, Maya offered as she skateboarded past them on a quantum-locked barrier she'd somehow convinced the simulation was actually a very fast floor. At least we're not using the really exploity stuff. This isn't the really exploity stuff, whimpered a junior instructor. Nah, we haven't even started abusing texture mapping or polygon collision detection yet, she replied cheerfully, before vanishing through what was supposed to be an impenetrable energy shield by convincing it she was actually part of its security protocols. The simulation's timer read 11 minutes and 47 seconds when all 3 humans simultaneously converged on the central command room. Trevor through a wall he'd convinced wasn't there, Aiden from above through creative application of inverse gravity, and Maya by what appeared to be quantum tunneling via aggressive furniture manipulation. Current position undefined, the system AI announced helpfully. Suggested course of action, scream internally. The gathered aliens watched in stunned silence as the 3 humans posed victoriously in a room that had, until about 12 minutes ago, been considered theoretically unreachable. Behind them, reality itself seemed to be holding itself together purely out of spite. So Trevor asked, casually leaning against a wall that was trying very hard to decide if he was actually there or not, did we beat the record? The simulation timer ticked to 12 minutes exactly as warning klaxons began blaring. Warning reality coherence at 15%. Warning physics engine requiring therapy. Warning existence undefined. Please restart universe. I think Aiden said, still technically falling upwards. We might have broken more than just the record. Maya, surfing on what was either a chair or a localized violation of space-time, beamed. Mission accomplished. In the observation deck, Vex stared at the scene before him, mandibles twitching. What did we just witness? According to these readings, a technical officer replied weakly, either the greatest military achievement in history or the complete mental breakdown of our physics engine. Possibly both. Through the simulation speakers came Trevor's voice, hey, do you think if we stack enough chairs in a quantum superposition, we can access the developer console? The simulation mercifully chose that moment to crash, possibly out of self-preservation. The emergency simulation shutdown took longer than usual, mostly because the system had to untangle several chairs from the fabric of space-time. When the dust finally settled, 6 different system administrators huddled around terminals, muttering phrases like physically impossible. And what happened to the laws of thermodynamics? 12 minutes and 4 seconds, Vex announced, his voice carrying the hollow tone of someone who'd just watched their entire worldview get drop-kicked into next week. They completed the unsolvable simulation in 12 minutes and 4 seconds. Technically 11 minutes and 47 seconds, Maya corrected cheerfully. The last 17 seconds were just reality trying to cope with what we did to it. The lead system administrator, a Quantari with 17 cybernetic enhancement lobes, looked up from their terminal with the 1,000-yard stare of someone who'd seen too much code. We've reviewed the logs. They didn't actually break any rules. What came the collective shriek from every alien in the room. The simulation parameters never explicitly stated that quantum barrier clipping was forbidden, the administrator explained, sounding like they needed a drink. Nor was there any rule against. Checks notes convincing the targeting AI that furniture is a valid military strategy. Aiden raised his hand. In our defense, those chairs were very tactical. Trevor nodded sagely. Sun Tzu said, the supreme art of war is to yeet your enemy's physics engine until it cries. He did not say that, Vex protested. How do you know? Were you there? The review committee, consisting of the Academy's most senior instructors, had gathered around a holoscreen displaying the run stats. Their expressions ranged from existential crisis to considering early retirement. Look at these numbers, one whispered. They maintained quantum superposition of 17 different objects simultaneously. That's not even supposed to be possible. The targeting AI has filed for emotional distress, another added weakly. Maya approached the committee, still holding what appeared to be a partially phase-shifted chair. So do we get extra credit for style points? The room fell silent as Senior Instructor Zix Vex slowly rose from his station. His exoskeleton clicked thoughtfully as he regarded the three humans who had just rewritten the laws of possible. In 103 years, he began slowly. We have seen every conventional military strategy attempted against this simulation. We have witnessed the finest tactical minds of a dozen species fail, and you three just... He gestured vaguely at the error log, which was still scrolling, ... memed your way to victory. To be fair, Trevor offered, they were very calculated memes. The Academy's AI chose that moment to display the official completion certificate, although the usual congratulations text seemed to be glitching between languages and possibly dimensions. Somewhere in the background, a system administrator could be heard weeping softly over the physics engine's code, whispering, "What did they do to you? What did they do to you?" The next day, a new set of rules appeared on the Galactic Military Academy's simulation guidelines, helpfully labeled Human Protocols in bright red. 1. Chairs must maintain a singular quantum state at all times. 2. Reality clipping is strictly forbidden. 3. The physics engine is not a suggestion. 4. Speedrunning is classified as a war crime. 5. No convincing the AI that you are furniture. Maya, reading these rules during breakfast, nearly choked on her coffee. They forgot to ban wall climbing through inverse gravity manipulation. Don't give them ideas, Aiden muttered, already sketching new exploits. Besides, they also forgot about item duplication through save state manipulation. At the instructor's lounge, a rather intense discussion was taking place about human problem-solving methodologies. It's not just that they broke the simulation, as Zenthari professor explained, gesturing with all four arms. It's that their first instinct upon seeing an impregnable fortress was to ask, but what if we break reality instead? Zix Vex, still recovering from yesterday's events, chittered thoughtfully. Perhaps this explains why humans are classified as Deathworlders. Not because of their planet's gravity or predators, but because they evolved on a world where they had to outthink physics itself. They don't see rules as obstacles, another instructor added. They see them as fascinating suggestions for what might go wrong if you push hard enough. Meanwhile, in the cadet common room, a group of alien students had cornered Trevor, demanding an explanation of speedrunning culture. So let me get this straight, a Valaxian cadet said slowly. You intentionally try to break games, for fun. Not break, Trevor corrected. Optimize, by breaking them. By creatively interpreting their physical limitations, Trevor grinned. Did you know that in this one ancient Earth game called Skyrim, you could climb mountains faster by jumping sideways up them? The aliens stared at him in horror. Or in another game, you could skip half the content by walking backward through certain doors because the game only checked for progression triggers from one direction. Several cadets made signs to ward off evil in their respective cultures. The day concluded with an official Academy announcement: the K-Thorian siege simulation would be temporarily closed for comprehensive reality enforcement updates. Unofficial sources suggested they were completely rebuilding the physics engine from scratch, this time with what they called anti-human protocols. Maya, Aiden, and Trevor received both the highest marks in the Academy's history and a formal request to never approach military simulation equipment again without supervision and a reality anchor. As they left the Academy that evening, they passed a group of alien cadets attempting to stack chairs in various geometric patterns. Should we tell them it only works if you desynchronize the quantum state first? Aiden whispered. Nah, Maya grinned. Let them discover the joy of breaking reality on their own. Behind them, the Academy's AI was reportedly still in therapy, occasionally muttering about chairs and the fundamental laws of physics being more like physics guidelines, really.